If you've played Classic WoW for any meaningful amount of time, then you already know how bad the RMT problem has become. Gold buying, bots, inflation, none of this is new. We've been having the same conversations since 2019, and yet here we are in 2026, still experiencing the same exact problems. At some point, Blizzard needs to decide what they're actually going to do with the RMT problem in Classic. Are they going to become more aggressive with combating illegal activity, or are they just going to implement the WoW token? Because right now it feels like RMT is only taken seriously when a major scandal happens or a ban wave gets announced, and that's clearly not solving the problem. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video is because I think we've reached a point where Blizzard needs to stop pretending this isn't an issue. This isn't something that suddenly appeared in TBC Anniversary. This isn't something that started with recent news of guilds like Dents getting deleted for buying gold, and it certainly isn't something limited to a handful of servers. RMT has been one of the biggest discussions in World of Warcraft since the game launched in 2004, and it's been especially bad since Classic launched in 2019. It's followed Classic in every version. We've seen it in Classic Era, Season of Mastery, Season of Discovery, TBC Classic in 2021, and now we're seeing it probably at its worst in TBC Anniversary. The version of the game might change, but the conversation never does. It's always the same topics: bots, gold buying, inflation, suspicious activity, ban waves, and every few months the community ends up right back where it started, talking about the same exact problem. That's what makes this situation so frustrating. After Classic running for almost 7 years at the time of this video releasing, it doesn't feel like we're any closer to a real solution than we were when Classic first launched. And one thing that often gets overlooked in these discussions is that players aren't just sitting around complaining. Players actively report bots, they report gold sellers, they submit tickets that they have to wait days for to get a response from, they post evidence online, they make forum posts, players even create videos about it, hence me creating one. Players try to bring attention to what they believe is happening throughout the game, and yet many players feel like those reports go nowhere. Whether that's completely true or not almost doesn't matter anymore, because the perception has become so widespread throughout the community. Players see bots farming around the clock, they see suspicious activity that gets reported repeatedly and goes unanswered, they even see the same complaints showing up year after year, and when they don't see visible action, confidence in the system starts to disappear, and at some point players stop asking whether a bot was reported. They start asking whether reporting even matters. That's not a good place for the community to be in. You know, recently Blizzard took one of the most aggressive actions we've seen against RMT in Classic WoW with the deletion of the guild Dents, and regardless of where you stand on that situation, I think the reaction from the community was incredibly revealing. A lot of players weren't talking about Dents, they were talking about RMT overall. The conversation quickly shifted toward how widespread players believe RMT has become throughout Classic. Whether those claims are accurate or not isn't really the point. The point is that a large portion of the community clearly believes this is a huge problem, and honestly I understand why players feel that way, because for years we have watched the same cycle repeat itself. You know, some type of RMT scandal happens, a ban wave happens, Blizzard takes action against a high profile target like a guild, then eventually the conversation dies down until the next incident arrives. The problem is that many players don't feel like the underlying issue is ever truly being addressed, and one of the biggest consequences of RMT is its impact on the economy. There are multiple factors that influence an MMO economy, but it would be difficult to argue that bots constantly generating gold and resources have no impact whatsoever. Every version of Classic eventually reaches the same point. Players start talking about the cost of consumes, the cost of materials, the cost of raid prep, the cost of enchants and gems, and eventually players begin asking, why does everything feel so expensive? Again, RMT isn't the only reason, but it's also difficult to separate the economy from years of botting and illegal gold activity entering the game that does increase the overall price of items. The average player notices these things. They notice when farming feels less rewarding, they notice when prices continue to climb, and they notice when participating in the economy feels increasingly frustrating. What makes this situation even more interesting is currently where we are. This isn't the first time we've played TBC. It's not even the second. This is the third time. You know, players know the raids, they know the professions, they know the gold farms, they know the economy. Players know how to optimize almost every aspect of the game, and despite all of that experience, RMT remains one of the biggest discussions and problems in the community. That should be setting off alarm bells, because if the problem is still significant after multiple versions of Classic, then whatever Blizzard is currently doing clearly isn't enough. This is where my biggest frustration comes from. I don't know what Blizzard's long-term plan is with RMT, and I don't think most players do either. Right now, it feels like Blizzard is stuck somewhere in the middle. They don't appear willing to aggressively eliminate RMT, but they also don't appear willing to fully embrace alternate solutions. So what happens? Bots continue operating, gold buying continues, inflation continues, players continue complaining. Then eventually another ban wave happens, big whoop, the cycle repeats all over again. At some point, Blizzard needs to pick a direction. If they believe RMT threatens the integrity of the game, then commit to fighting it. It's against your TOS. Act faster, be more aggressive, show players that reports matter, show players that the rules are being enforced consistently. Because from a player's perspective, that's not what it feels like right now. Now, this is where things get controversial. I've been against the WoW token being implemented in Classic for years. I don't think it belongs in Vanilla, and I also don't think it belongs in Classic Plus. But when it comes to Anniversary, especially if Wrath ends up happening, I think Blizzard needs to stop sitting on the fence. Because if the long-term plan is aggressively combating RMT, then show us. If the long-term plan eventually is adding the WoW token, then why not just do that right now? What doesn't make sense is continuing this middle ground approach where illegal RMT remains widespread while Blizzard occasionally steps in during major incidences like the guild dents funneling 250,000 gold through its guild bank. And honestly, like, I've never wanted the token in Classic, but after years of watching the same problem continue, it feels like Blizzard is eventually going to have to make a choice one way or another. The one area where my opinion hasn't changed is Classic Plus. If Classic Plus eventually becomes a reality, I do not think the WoW token belongs there. Vanilla is different. The journey matters, the world matters, the economy matters. A huge part of Vanilla's appeal comes from earning your progress within the game itself. That's why I believe Blizzard needs to figure out what they're doing before Classic Plus arrives, because if RMT is already one of the biggest problems in Anniversary servers right now, it's only going to become a bigger discussion when players start entering Classic Plus. But what do you think? Should Blizzard crack down harder on RMT, or do you think the WoW token is ultimately the direction of where we're headed? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh man, this is insane. There's so fucking many of them. Holy shit, dude. Oh, here they go. Dude, they came out like so fucking fast. Made a big mistake being first in line. Yeah.